this record inflationary period, arguably at the hands of the Justin Trudeau Liberals and their endless money printing throughout the COVID hysteria, which now he's starting to reap the repercussions of. Yep. And we're hearing now that he's going to be shuffling his cabinet. So this is huge news. Just this morning, 2 additional ministers announced that they would not be seeking re-election. And these are high top bureaucrats in the Liberal cabinet. So this particular story comes from Global News, and it's the announcement of Transport Minister Omar Alghabra and Procurement Minister Helena. I want to make sure that I pronounce her last name, Jaczek. They announced on their social media this morning that they would not be seeking re-election. And so the way that Trudeau has been campaigning, and he's been hosting these town halls and traveling all across the country where he just gets repeatedly heckled, and has groups of protesters following his entourage along. Now we have some of his senior cabinet announcing that they will not be seeking re-election. But I don't think it really matters, because they're sitting on a gold-plated pension. They have a cushy retirement laid out for them. Helena Jaczek is 72 years old. So she gets to sit on, a nice retirement pension. And Omar Alghabra, I mean, he's only 53, but he'll have a cushy pension waiting for him as he steps down as the Minister of Transportation, which I think his legacy, Omar Alghabra's legacy, will be the failure of the ArriveCAN app, which we saw instituted in Canada for all travelers, both Canadian nationals and international travelers coming to Canada were coerced by this government under the guise of, stopping the spread of COVID-19 to download what many called spyware, government-sanctioned spyware, through this ArriveCAN app, where you had to list your vaccine status, upload your private medical information, your testing, COVID-19 PCR testing documents, and then you had the government basically following up with you during the post-arrival period on whether or not you became symptomatic with COVID. But they never tracked any of the data. It never was used in any sort of tangible way. The company itself, I think it was like $53 million it cost for this app to be developed, whereas small Canadian talent said they could do it for a quarter, if that, of the price.
Less than that.
Yeah. And so I think that will be Omar Alghabra's legacy, is just his complete inability to adequately manage the COVID response, pandemic preparedness, the strikes at the airports, the failures at the airports, the backlogs. Traveling there in 2021 and 2022 was absolutely insanely cumbersome. And it was at the hands of him as the transport minister. And same with the trucker convoy that took to the nation's capital in 2022. This was due to COVID-related mandates instituted by the federal government and him as transport minister.
Well, I wanted to have your opinion on that, but what do you think is the strategic plan behind the fact that now they are shuffling the different minister to change for other one? What do you think, that because they have a fresh meat in expression, that now like people will like maybe trust more liberals?
Well, I wonder if they're just rats fleeing a sinking ship, as they see maybe their internal polling is showing that favorability of the Liberal cabinet is at an all-time low. We see it when Trudeau is out in public. He's heckled by protesters. He is not liked by many Canadians on the ground. He's truly is a fringe minority government, and he's only being upheld because the other fringe minority government of the NDP and he have this unofficial coalition where they essentially prop each other up as though they are a majority government, but they aren't. They're two fringe minority governments banding together, and in this very undemocratic exercise of power and overreach into the House of Commons and our parliamentary procedures. And I think that Canadians are fed up. They're seeing that their policies are negatively affecting people, our economy. Like if we can't afford fruit to feed our families, this is a government failure. This isn't a good sign that things are going well in Canada. Our various systems that we fund and we pay into with these aggressive taxes are failing us and are crumbling. And so either this is fleeing, a sinking ship, or maybe Trudeau is shuffling around to become more woke, or will the cabinet become less woke? Who's to say? As I mentioned, some of these ministers are getting up there in age, and yeah, maybe it's to get fresh meat in, but maybe it's because they can see via their internal polling, but also out in public, that Canadians are fed up and they're not agreeable to the policies and the way that the government is heading.
Do you think that will happen in 2023, or you think that maybe earlier in 2024?
I would personally, I hope that the sooner that an election is called, the better. I don't know how we could continue on. I think so. The leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, has said that they've banded together at this unofficial coalition, I believe, until sometime in 2025. And many argue that that's because Jagmeet Singh is on track to get his pension in 2025. So you have to be 2 terms running, 8 years as a minister in order to get your pension. And so Jagmeet Singh isn't quite there yet. He needs roughly a year and a half more in his term to get that pension. And so many argue that his reason for forming this unofficial coalition is just so that he can ensure he gets his pension in 2025. But it looks dire if we're into 2025 with this government who remains so out of touch, showing grotesque ineptitude and incompetence. And as we're seeing now, so he has 3 ministers not running again, as we mentioned: Omar Alghabra, procurement minister Helena, and then there's also on Monday, mental health and addictions minister Carolyn Bennett. She announced that she would not be seeking re-election at the end of her current term. And then we also have Joyce Murray, who's 69 years old. And there's talks now. We have this tweet to share as well, if we can pull it up on screen. Yeah, Joyce Murray, she's the fisheries minister. She won't be seeking re-election. And then there's also some unofficial talks that Justice Minister David Lametti and Bill Blair, the emergency preparedness minister and former public safety minister, will also not be running for re-election. So this is pretty huge.
That's a lot.
These were also key players in the handling of the pandemic response, of the Freedom Convoy, the trucker convoy that took to the nation's capital. I mean, Alexa, you were there on the ground. The political landscape at that time was really looking very dire. And I think that was really the sentiment on the ground at the convoy itself, is just the distaste and the dissatisfaction with these very ministers.
Yes, and the manipulation of the information, the lies that was like propagated into the cabinet. And we saw it during the commission, like all like the untruth that was just like unveiled during that commission. And finally, like the commissioner needed to trust a side or another. And it's really sad that he trusts like the side of the cabinet, because there was like so much manipulation of information, and this is disgraceful for Canadian. And I would say that I'm not going to miss them. Or maybe we'll get worse. We never know like what we will get afterwards. Is it worse or it's going to get better? We cannot know until we don't have the name of the people.
Well, that's right. That's why I say, like, is the Liberal Party going to become more woke or less? Are they shifting things around because they're seeing that Canadians are not in agreement with the way that the party is going? I mean, regardless, it looks like the Liberal Party is going down. The public distaste and distrust in the government is up, and we have this massive either resignation or not seeking reelection happening with top senior officials in the Liberal cabinet. This is pretty big news. And I just, if it weren't for that NDP coalition and the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, propping up the Liberal government, I think this would just trigger, this would be a clear indication that there is an election. And maybe there still is, maybe there's still hope, but I don't know how we're going to make it to 2025. That's for sure.
And the thing is, imagine if the Liberals are losing the next election, talking for this. And finally, they decide to replace Justin Trudeau. I'm just wondering who is the person who will take the place of Justin Trudeau and try to rebuild the Liberal Party. Poor that person.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess we'll see in the coming days. I think this is supposed to be announced tomorrow morning, if I'm remembering correctly. So we'll see who's going to be shuffled around and put in some new positions. I don't know if before we head on into an ad break, we want to just show this little clip of Omar Alghabra and his actual social media announcement.
Hi, friends. After almost 11 years as a member of parliament, 2.5 years as a minister, and 6 elections, I've made the difficult decision to not run in the next election. Until then, I will continue to serve the constituents of Mississauga Centre as their member of parliament. As a result of this decision, I'm also stepping aside from my role as minister because the Prime Minister deserves a cabinet who is committed to running in the next federal campaign. This was not an easy decision. It's always tricky to figure out the best timing for such a step, but I feel it's the right time for me. I've had an incredible journey in public service. As the Minister of Transport, I helped lead our country through many challenging issues. We protected Canadians during COVID while supporting the transportation industry during an extraordinary period. We worked on reforming our aviation sector by enhancing transparency and accountability. We worked on improving our supply chain and established a supply chain office that will advance resilience and efficiency within our transportation network. We are moving closer to making the dream of a high-frequency passenger rail that connects Quebec City to Toronto a reality. Those are just few examples of the important projects that I had the honor of working on that are important to Canada. During this wonderful ride, I met incredible Canadians and visited every corner of our beautiful country. I loved every minute of it. I'm very grateful to have worked alongside Prime Minister Trudeau and to have gained his confidence. I remain committed to his vision and his leadership. I also want to thank my supporters who've kept believing in me, my current and former staff for their dedication, the amazing public servants who serve Canadians with integrity, my colleagues who have become like family to me. And lastly, I want to thank my constituents who I've had the honor of representing in Ottawa. This has been the journey of a lifetime, and I feel exceptionally lucky to have had this experience. Canada is the best country in the world because of our people and our values. I'm excited for what's next. But in the meantime, thank you for everything.
I think it was going to cry or what? Like, he pet himself talking about, oh, I did so great for transportation, plane industry. And no, you actually did the opposite. Stop propagating lies. You actually make like the airport the worst in the world. You actually like did the worst thing for the trucker to stop them to do their job and to make their company running. You stole so many jobs from workers because you impose a shop that people didn't want it, and now you just say, oh, I was so great and now I'm going to something else better. I was like, seriously, like this guy is living another world, but I don't know where is it, but it's in his head.
Yeah, it's the ivory tower that they just dwell up in there with not a care in the world. He says, I visited every corner of this country. And I'm thinking, yeah, on taxpayer dollars, thanks to the taxes of hardworking Canadians who are struggling to feed their families, let alone tour across the country.
And
he says that Canada's...
Thanks for the fossil fuel that actually did transport you too, eh?
Yeah, we can't forget about that. He says that Canada is the best country because of the people and the values that it has, but these politicians are so out of touch and ignore the people and those very values that built our great country, and are just striving to turn it into this woke dumpster fire of inclusivity and tolerance under the guise of disavowing every identity that used to make Canada, this great country that he says that we have. And I think, as I've already mentioned, that Canadians are seeing that the Liberal Party is just destroying the best country that we know and love, and are getting fed up with it. But of course, he had to say in there that he still supports the vision of Justin Trudeau. So that's not very reassuring for who's to replace next. Or maybe that's just the doublespeak of politicians who talk out of both sides of their mouths.
That's a clip from something we call Rebel News Daily. It's our daily live stream hosted by my friend David Menzies, but the show also includes a rotating cast of hosts and special guests, including me. It's a great way for us to talk about the news of the day as the news is happening in an unscripted fashion, and it's an awesome way for you to interact with us as well. We stream every weekday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Mountain, wherever you find Rebel News. See you there.